Trudie Mason sitting in, hearing again, it seems that there's a case like this probably every week about a family which has put down roots here in Quebec, finding out all of a sudden that their immigration status is precarious and they are being told they will have to leave. This family has been living in the Eastern Townships for 15 years, and it was when returning from a trip to the U.S. recently that these family members were informed that, well, they have 2 weeks to pack up and leave. On the phone with us, Alice and Brent Figg. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Trudie. It's great to be with you.
Thanks, Trudie.
Take us back to the beginning. What brought you to Canada in the first place, to the townships?
Yeah, actually, we have truly had the Canadian experience. We actually immigrated 15 years ago to balmy Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I was fortunate enough to be selected as a provincial coach in conjunction with Rowing Canada and the Manitoba Rowing Association to come into Winnipeg and be a rowing coach there. And then our lives transitioned eastward. I ended up in the Olympic Training Center in London, Ontario. And then for the last 8 years, we've been here in Quebec, based in Bromont.
And you're both Americans. How many kids in the family now?
We have 6.
And how many of them were born here?
The youngest 4 children were born in Canada. Trudie starting in Winnipeg. Our son was born in Winnipeg. We have 2 daughters who were born in London, Ontario. And then our youngest son was born here in Quebec in Cowansville. So our kids truly represent our experience in Canada and our integration into all 3 of these incredible communities.
What happened when you were returning from a visit to the States recently? What were you told by Canada Border Services?
We were given a 2-week notice to depart Canada, to sell. We were advised at the border to sell our home, to liquidate any assets, to leave, and to expect not to be able to return.
And why was this? What was the reason cited?
The reason cited was that we were a risk to return to Canada and to want to remain based on all of our ties here, that our whole life is based in Canada, that we have 4 Canadian children, that our home is here in Bromont in the Eastern Townships, that our kids are fully bilingual and integrated into Francophone and Anglophone communities, and that we would want to stay and remain in Canada.
Had you tried to apply for permanent residency and not just go from work permit to work permit?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of Canadians, we've actually, and especially since the pandemic, a lot of folks sit in the gig economy. We have actually had 3 applications in for permanent residency. And 2 of those applications actually were pretty disrupted by the COVID pandemic when the folks in immigration really had a substantial backlog related to clearing cases. And as the listeners may be aware or not aware, many of the aspects that are in a permanent resident application are very time-bound. So you can have something like a medical that expires, you can have a job offer or a job contract expire that then impacts the actual ability to complete the permanent resident application. So we actually have had an application to apply, and we actually transitioned career-wise post mid-pandemic. We made the decision that I would pursue a master's in systems engineering, working primarily in critical infrastructure and defense to boost our chances of integration and contribution. So we sit in this kind of interesting space with regard to that.
Were you aware that the work permit was no longer applicable? Was there a little warning or an inkling that you might be in trouble before you hit the border?
Yeah, I mean, we have 15 years of interaction with the border, all lawfully. We've worked with Service Canada and we've worked with IRCC, and this really came as a big shock. We actually applied for a bridge status, being a visitor status following the termination of the last work permit at the end of July. And what we didn't realize in crossing out of the United States is actually that the temporary visitor status, so essentially just being a tourist, right? Like not we're only here as kind of inverse snowbirds at that point, to give us some time to continue to apply for positions here, to continue our immigration process. That was actually annulled when we crossed back into Canada. And this is, one of the things that we found in the process is, we can be speaking to the MLA or the MP. We can be speaking to, even friends in the RCMP, or in different diplomatic situations. And what we found is that, there's a policy on paper. That policy may not always integrate the advice that you get from, say, an MP or an MLA, or even, people who have worked in the industry for CBSA. It doesn't necessarily or always match what happens at the border. And it may be hard to believe, but, we have a great deal of empathy for the folks working at the border, because they have a really challenging job, evaluating what the situation is of people coming in, and the tools that they have and the way that they can work with that are challenging. That being said, we've never experienced anything like what we experienced with that kind of declaration that we have to be prepared to liquidate our assets and leave the country in
2
days.
weeks. Yeah, that's kind of nutty. So what are you doing now? Have you hired an immigration lawyer? Do you have any hope that you'll be able to stay?
Yeah, I mean, we've actually been supported by an immigration lawyer and immigration lawyers and consultants and accountants for 8 years. So, we do have people working on our behalf as far as that goes. I think what we desire to do is to draw some attention to this so that other people don't end up in this situation. But also, we never would want to consider that the inverse would happen in the opposite direction. So other people that are in a similar situation with this border, I mean, I grew up in Detroit, a stone's throw from Windsor, Amherstburg, LaSalle, and the long neighborly relationship between these two countries is something that doesn't need to be have a barrier like this, I guess, is what part of what my perspective is in this. So, we want that kind of interaction, and we love our experience here in Canada. Our children are essentially are Canadian.
Are you going to go, though, if you can't straighten this out in the next week or so?
We've always followed the rules to the letter of the law. We've always complied, absolutely. So we are preparing ourselves for having to leave by next Monday. We have 1 week left in this visa. One thing that shocked us in this 2-week period and being given this document was that generally a 90-day or 3-month interim period is given to regulate an expired visa. And so we have not experienced this ourselves, but we are aware that normally in this situation, 90-day grace period would be given in order to regulate an immigration situation and then move forward from there.
But you didn't get it this time.
We did not get it this time.
All I can say is very good luck to you and your family, Alice and Brent Figg. Thanks for joining us on CJD to tell us your story. I hope it gets straightened out.
Thank you, Trudie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trudie.
Have a good day now.